Notebook on Cities and Culture's Korea Tour is brought to you by Daniel Murphy, David Hayes, and Polar Inertia Journal, an outlet for artists and researchers documenting the urban condition at polarinertia.com. If somebody is interested in Korean film, and that's why they come to Korea, would you recommend they move here to Busan?
No. I mean, it depends what are the expectations you have. For example, my ultimate dream was to work in the Busan Film Festival. That hasn't been an option because they do accept foreigners, but if they can actually speak very good Korean, that's not my case yet. But probably if you're, for example, studying Korean, I couldn't just study here, I needed a job. So I got, like, this kind of lifestyle is easier in Busan because it's not the main city, the weather is super nice. In Seoul it's kind of cruel. In winter it's extremely cold and you have a lot of snow and ice, and in summer is also very cruel, the opposite.
I'll be gone before August myself for that reason.
Oh my God, yes, you're very smart. So if you consider like real lifestyle, maybe Busan is the right place to be. But it depends on your expectations. Everything is in Seoul, everything. So apart from the Busan Film Festival, yeah, you have the KOFIC, Korean Film Council here, but it's still an office. So, yeah. When I got here, I was happy. You have the beach, and that is good. The weather also is good because, as I say, it's not a minor subject. In Seoul, it's a very big problem, the weather they have. But probably you will have more opportunities to meet people related to the movies if you live there.
But you'll do it in the cold or the hot, or you'll do it in a context that's not as comfortable.
Exactly. For like everyday life, Busan is perfect.
It's here in Korea's more comfortable city of Busan we sit today on Notebook on Cities and Culture, where I'm speaking with somebody who has a lot of experience writing about Korean film, watching Korean film, thinking about Korean film. It's Sofía Ferrero Cárrega. She is a writer about, I think if you've seen her writing, and if you read Spanish, I personally like to read about Asian film and so on and so forth in Spanish. I don't know quite why, but if you've seen her writing in Spanish, you've probably seen it on film. Now, tell me this, the Busan Film Festival, why was that so attractive to you at first?
Busan Film Festival is the biggest and the most influential and important film festival in Asia. That's the truth. It's one of the most important film festivals in the world. Everything related with film festivals comes here. All the people from Cannes are here, San Sebastian, Locarno, they all come here. It's like a must in cinema. And at the same time, it's a very accessible film festival. So, for example, the parties in Korea, that is also not a small detail.
Right. The parties are very important in all aspects of life.
The parties are very important because in here you can actually share a table with the biggest film directors. You are sharing, it's not elitist, like Cannes, for example. In Cannes, you have this accreditation, you can go to these certain events, you can have these certain tickets. In Korea, it's not like that, because it's quite small yet. But if you have the opportunity to come, you will go to all the parties. You just have to know the right people, so you get the information. And it's in these kind of events where you actually meet the people. You meet the important film directors, you meet the important film critics, you meet the actors. That's also not a small part. So it's very accessible. At the same time, everybody comes here. You will meet them here. As we were talking before, Quentin Tarantino just suddenly one day he came here because he's a huge fan of Busan Film Festival. Only last year had the chance to come, so it's very magical. It's very magical. Everybody's here and you can actually see them and talk to them. You can sit and next to you is Tarantino watching a movie. I had the chance to interview Bong Joon-ho last year and it wasn't hard at all. It was so simple, so natural. Everybody says yes.
Especially if you're a foreigner wanting to interview, it seems. They're very eager to get contact with the foreign world outside of Korea. So it helps to bring that perspective, does it not?
It depends. For example, there's one actor. He's not very quality actor, but he's very popular actor that I have been wanting to interview for a long time. And because I speak English, I feel rejected. I don't get the interview. I don't think my Korean is not good enough to carry on an interview in Korean, but we can find a way. I have friends, they can help me, to translate.
But he only wants to do it in Korean.
Not in Korean, but in Asia. If I were from Japan, if I were from Taiwan or China, I think my chances would be better. So it depends, yes. Bong Joon-ho, when I saw we're talking about the director of Snowpiercer, Memories of Murder, Mother, one of my favorites directors these days. When I saw the way his team, his crew work, I understood why he's such a great director. Because everybody says yes, and they are super organized, they are super accessible, they prepare the interview outside for me. I was writing just for a Spanish website. It's not that I'm very influential or I have a lot of contacts, no. And they prepared the translator for me. It was super easy. And that's what made them great, too, to be accessible. Right. Otherwise, how would we know them?
Right, that's true.
That is true.
And there's not much written about Korean film in Spanish, is there?
No.
No.
I mean, everybody can write, but no everybody knows. And I'm not telling that I can and I know what I'm saying. I just say that before you were asking me why I moved to Korea, because once you get in love with this culture, you get to understand that if you're not here, you wouldn't be able to actually understand a little bit of it. And what I'm always afraid of is to be of course, I'm from Western, so my view is Western, but I don't want to have at least the prejudice. That's why I came here in the first place.
What was your first encounter with Korean film or Korean culture of any kind?
When I'm from Argentina, and I went to Barcelona to make a master. It was a short master in film critic. We had a subject, it was world cinema, and we went to Asian cinema, European cinema, Latin America, etc. And we had I was very lucky because I had a great teacher, Manu Yáñez. He's quite famous in Spain, and he knows a lot. And that was my first encounter, just with teachers. So some of the ways to get into Korean, for example, K-pop, and the doramas, like the dramas, the mini-series. But my way to know Korea was through author films. So it was, per se, was very interesting. But at the same time, Korean culture is not a very attractive culture in a first impression.
I see.
Like we were talking before.
What are those first impressions?
The first impression is something, for example, Hong Sangsoo, he's my favorite director.
It's mine as well.
Yeah, he's very interesting, but once you get to know him, once you get to see more than 5 or 6 films, because you understand the sense of humor and the things he's saying about Korea. The first impression is very well-dressed people, not extremely handsome because it's a different aesthetic, but they are very Western, very westernized.
Yeah, you could say that they look westernized,
Yeah,
but they don't act that way.
Of course
that's for
not.
sure.
Thank God they don't. Thank God they don't. So they're it's like a national effort to look good. Right. So they're very attractive in that way, but at the same time, the food is very subtle. The differences are very subtle. Every time I think I'm eating kimchi jjigae, that is kind of a soup, I am not. I'm eating another, and I'm saying, and I'm saying to my friends, "This is kimchi jjigae." No, kimchi
how could you say that?
Yeah, kimchi jjigae doesn't have this. Oh, really? So it's on the small differences where the variety is. That's why I like it, because in Western we have a lot of different things.
Right.
In here is on the small differences where that counts. So my first encounter was through cinema. Then I met food in Barcelona. In Argentina, I don't think I will be able to eat Korean food, but yeah, maybe because I'm not from Buenos Aires.
Is there in Buenos Aires, do you think, Korean food of note?
Yes, I think, yeah, but it's not like, oh, let's eat Japanese food tonight, let's eat Thai food tonight, let's eat Korean food. I don't think we would go there.
In very few countries is it in the same level of commonality.
Yeah, but for example, if you go to United States and you say kimchi, everybody would know.
That's true.
If you go to Argentina, we have no idea.
¿Qué es eso?
¿Qué es? ¿De qué hablas? Kimchi, moeo.
But you tried it in Spain. You got the exposure to the food in Spain, which is where you lived after Argentina and before Korea, properly.
Yes. That was my, Latin America, Europe, and then Asia.
Was living already away from your home continent, did that free you enough so where it didn't feel like it was such a leap to go to Korea? You were already living in another world almost.
Of course. Yeah, definitely. Before coming to Korea, I went to Argentina for like almost 3 months. And when I was saying I'm going to Korea, they were saying, what?
¿De qué hablas?
¿De qué hablas? ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué Korea? What is there? We don't know Korea. What?
Did they know anything at all about Korea?
No. The only thing we know is that we have a very cheap clothes like area in my city. But we don't know Korean. In Córdoba, I'm from Córdoba. They live a lot of Koreans there, but we don't see them on the street, on the cinema, on the bank. So it's still kind of. It says a lot of bad things about our culture.
You don't interact with Koreans that are there.
Yeah.
How did the decision come along? I mean, ever since you first encountered Korean film, were you thinking maybe I should go there, or was it more of a sudden thing, like it all built up to you having to decide where to go next? And then you thought, well, maybe it should be Korea. Was it gradual or was it sudden?
If I think about it, now that you mention it was gradually, because I started learning about Korean cinema. Then we decided to write a book about Korean cinema with other critics from the same school. Then I started studying Korean in Barcelona, and I didn't have a choice. Actually, that was the feeling.
I don't feel like I have a choice either but to come here.
I need to go there. Yeah, I need to go there.
It seems inevitable in some way. That's hard to explain.
Yeah, exactly. It's not something that you can experience outside, because, for example, I studied Korean for 2 years before coming here, and when I got here, I couldn't understand a word. That was very frustrating.
Listening is the hardest.
Yes. Because my teacher, she was Korean, but she wouldn't speak in Korean. So kind of
That's not very helpful.
Yeah, but at the same time, if she would have, I don't see how that would have worked in classroom.
Right. Well, you can start from a sort of miniature version of a language and build out from that. I remember in Denmark, talking to a Danish language teacher, and he said, all my students are from different countries. They don't share a common language.
Yeah.
I can't teach in that language, so I have to teach only in Danish, but they don't know a word of Danish. So I have to start with a miniature language, just like, this is that, this is that, that is that, what's your name? Repeating over and over again, hoping to build outward from there. But in Spain, who was taking this class with you? Were there a lot of Spanish people interested in studying Korean?
They were all from Spain.
You were the only Argentine there?
Yes,
Oh, wow.
actually. They have been studying Japanese before Korean. It's actually that's the natural way in Europe. You start from Japanese or Chinese, and then you go to Korean.
At least the grammar is the same in Japanese.
The grammar is the same, so they were very familiarized. For me, it was extremely hard. I was doubting myself. Am I half stupid or what? What? They are all understand what it's all about, and I'm not.
Right.
Yeah, because they had studied before. But at the same time, for example, when I came here as a Korean student. That was my first, visa actually as a student. I started at second level because I had already learned some. So I don't know how the teachers do. I know that they only speak in Korean, but because you are in Korea. But you know this magic in classroom that you can, at one point I could understand everything my teacher was saying, but only my teacher.
Right, yes.
Outside, he was like, what's going on? But
Other
my
people
teacher,
are different. Yeah.
she would say the exact same, I understand what you're saying.
Right,
The
right,
relationship, yeah.
Finally, I understand. And it's true for movies as well. Some movies you understand, some movies you don't, in my experience.
Yes, it's the same.
Like a Hong Sangsoo movie, I find, is easier to understand. I don't know why, but when I watch those, I get what they're saying. Other movies, simpler movies, sometimes I don't understand at all. I'm not sure why. I mean, have you had that experience?
Hong Sangsoo, because he's always talking about casual relationships, the conversations are not deep. So the casual conversation and this kind of made-up lines, if you have studied Korean, that's the first things we learn. So maybe because of that. In some other movies, maybe they seem simpler, but they're actually more complicated because they have actually conversations. Hong Sangsoo movie, they don't.
Yes, that's true.
They're just always saying the same things, and always about he's always making fun about the social arrangements and how to behave in front of each other.
And do you find those are the same kind of conversations you have when you're out with friends? You hear the same things you hear in Hong Sangsoo movies when you're sitting around the table like they do?
Yeah. When I came here, I couldn't stop thinking, wow. This is, yeah, I've seen this. Yes, I understand. Korean men, wow. Exactly the same.
Now, I'm sure you saw, I think it's still his most recent, no, it's not his most recent film. I've seen a few since then, but Taranara I saw in another country, with Isabelle Huppert as the star, the one foreign woman in the Korean context. Did you feel much kinship with Isabelle Huppert in that movie? When in the context you are the one foreign woman?
Yeah, now I'm actually, sometimes I try not to forget. You know, every time I take a flight, I try to get in touch with that. The first times I took a flight, I was so excited and wow, and I couldn't understand the face of these boring people saying, oh yeah, it's just another plane. Oh, 12 hours in a plane. I really want to not forget that feeling. Yeah. So in Korean, I try to remember to remember to myself, to remind myself all the time not to lose that, because it's very easy to get used to. But most of the times, I'm the only girl, I'm the only white, because in here we are white. That was another shock. I'm white, wow, yes. Usually I'm the only white, I'm the only girl between Koreans, so...
It's an advantage to be outside the society in a lot of ways, isn't it? You get to have I don't know about a clearer perspective, but there's almost a sense in which you can understand society differently than a Korean can, than Koreans themselves can, right?
Yeah, but I always feel very jealous.
Oh, yes?
In a healthy way, but yeah, the way, for example, now I'm teaching Spanish and English here, but I have a very interesting group of Spanish learners. And one of them, he comes from a very traditional family. So every time we are talking, for example, I was planning the future in Spanish, so I was making them write about the horoscope. That's very good because it's like a prediction. So we were talking about the different like Sagittarian, Capricornian, Libra, Aquarius, this kind of subject, and I was explaining the Chinese horoscope, and they were telling me there are actually 10 different elements. You know that in Western we talk about like all the animals, the 12 animals. And only like wood, fire, water, and metal, I think there is. Well, there are actually 10.
10 elements.
Yes. And then he knows. That's come from China, you know, Chinese, the Hanja. And I'm very jealous, the knowledge they have. Because at the same time in Western, for example, in Latin America, because we were a colonized country, still in the education, our education in history is very short. So we actually start learning from the 19th century. Before nothing. Okay, maybe Columbus And then, boom, we jump to the 19th century. So when they say, they're complaining, my English students, they are like 12 years old, and they're complaining, teacher, we have tomorrow in school history exam is so long, 5,100 of history, 5,000 years of history, so long. I feel so jealous.
They have that deeper sense of history.
Yeah, and they also have the particularity. We, in Argentina, we are half more, like 90% from Europe. So the sense of Latin American culture is also, that is why we have tango. Because we don't have that. It's like missing, a missing part.
Right.
They're complaining, but yeah, because they are kids, but at the same time they do have this, and they're very unique. So it's not that I feel, wow, I can understand their culture from outside. I'm very jealous I am not inside.
Right. I guess it's the same coming from the United States, where you're from a society that only started a few hundred years ago. You can't reach back thousands of years. But it seems like Koreans or Korea, they're often very concerned with, very intent to connect themselves to their distant past. They always want to draw a line, not necessarily, even if they don't think about the last 50 years that much, they'll think about the last 500 years a lot. You know what I mean?
Yes. You can see that on TV, for example. Last year, they exploded the dramas. Yes. That's the best place to see the trending these days. In Chosun area was like the last dynasty. All the movies made in that based in that period of time, all the dramas made in that period of time. At the same time, Koreans can be very conservative and kind of racist, for example, when you're talking about mixed couples, because they need to protect their culture, and I totally understand that. It's very complicated to read it from outside Korea, because we have all these words. We have discrimination, we have close-minded, we have misogynist, we have a lot of words to name it, but you cannot use them here.
I mean, we both come from different societies societies that are more, where the race relations are more complicated. As a Korean friend of mine was saying, this is a Korean who came to America 20, 30 years ago. So he's been in America a long time, but he says he's always trying to find what's wrong with his homeland. He's saying, Koreans, they always complain that America is so racist, but they don't have any other races, so they don't even realize, they don't know what that is. He says this about Asian countries in general. They look at the West, say, look at how many racial problems they have, but if you only have one race, essentially, you're not going to have too many problems, are you? Not till you start diversifying, which is happening now.
Yes, it is happening. It is happening, and it's bringing some, for example, when I finished university, my thesis was on gender studies. So I have like the feminist mind. And when I came here, one of the things, I was watching a TV show, and it's very, very funny. This TV show is called We Got Married. Have you heard of that?
That name rings a bell, but I'm not sure. I'm sure I haven't seen it.
It's very weird because they married on fiction to celebrities.
Oh, yes, I've heard of this.
And they made them share this kind of marital life. They have a house. I don't think they sleep together like in the same house. I don't think so. But anyway, they can marry like 1 year, right? This is as long as they don't actually have a couple that everybody knows, right? On this show, there was like the first time that they put a Korean girl, and he's half Korean. I don't remember his name now, but he's, kind of famous. He was raised, but he has, I think, a Korean mother, but he's French. He's very Western looking, but he speaks very beautiful Korean. And they were talking like the first time they meet, and he was saying, okay, and I really want to help in the house, like cleaning, this kind of duties. And she said, we will see. We will see how that is good for me, she said. And that was that really opened my eyes, because if you come from Western and you see the way women behave, and the relationship women and men have is very old-fashioned, and it's very machist, and it's very against women's rights, and all this. But at the same time, you understand that the house is a power.
Right. The woman said, "We'll see." Yes.
So she said, "We will see," because if you have the power outside the house and inside the house.
What do I have?
Yeah. That was very shocking for me.
Right.
Yeah. So
it is interesting. I was thinking about this on the subway today. In fact, they're more common in Seoul, but even here in Busan, there's these ads for a matchmaking service, Duel. And you've seen these ads around. They have a lot of the ads are kind of puns, so they're interesting to read as a Korean learner to try to figure them out. They're pretty simple jokes. I mean, to a Korean, they would seem stupid, but to me, I learn from them. But it makes me realize that what if I saw this in America? Ads for matchmaking services all over the subway telling you, don't wait to get married. You can get married now. We can marry you now. And even in conversations with people here, they are, compared to America especially, always talking about marriage, obsessed with the concept of marriage. I don't know how it is in Argentina, but in the States, it just seems like, why do you keep talking about this? It exists in America. Marriage exists, but it's not the focus of everything. You know, how do you feel about that?
My point before with this show was that Korean culture is in charge of mother. The mother teaches the languages. So now the society is becoming more there are more mixed couples. It's not that bad as long as the woman is Korean.
Right.
Yeah. They will have a problem because they are not usually very close with the in-law family. Mm-hmm. There's always a conflict. Right. But if you're a woman, a foreigner, and the man is Korean, it's a huge problem because the kids will not know about Korean culture.
Because they don't have the way to learn. According to them, they don't have a way to learn.
Yeah. I see. If you're in Korea, maybe they will be with the other family, but if you're, I don't know, it's very complicated. I
think that will westernize them too much.
Too much?
Yes.
Yeah. I have a couple friend. He's from Spain and she's from Korea. They met online actually, and he came here, and they got married. And her family doesn't like him that much, but it's not an actual problem.
Right.
Because of this that I'm saying. Going to the marriage part, marriage here, long time ago in Western, it was a status. Mm-hmm. So if you're married, of course, with the right person, as long as it's the right person, some actors or politicians, they just get married because they need to. They have to.
Right.
I have some students, and they are 50 or 40, and when I asked them about how did you meet your wife? Well, we met. Soketing is called. Soketing. When they introduce, it's like blind dating. It's a very delicate issue here because in Western we don't usually go to blind dates, but in here it's a very delicate because if you introduce me to a friend of yours, you are taking responsibility from him. Right. The same as the other part, right? So also it's like a social value.
Right. And how much have movies helped you understand that and other parts of Korean society? Specifically through film, have you learned a lot that's helped you understand how that works here?
No.
No? It has to be just in life?
Yeah, because it's the same if someone asks me about Hollywood movies.
I see.
Yeah.
Yes, they don't teach you a lot about life in America.
They don't teach you anything. What do they teach?
It's true.
If they teach something, it's the wrong message.
Right.
I think that Hong Sangsoo, the director we were talking about before.
I was going to say, the smaller films teach more.
Yes.
Right.
Like independent movies, maybe. Mm-hmm. But if you go My mother, before I was coming here, she watched like 2 or 3 films. One of them from Hong Sangsoo. She loved it.
Do you remember which one?
Yeah. It was The Day He Arrived.
Oh, yes,
one of my favorites. And then I put The Chaser, Nahonjin, and my mother was like, "You are going to that country? It's so dangerous. They will kill you and they will murder you." Yeah, because they are thrillers, and we're in Busan, and Busan used to be the mafia in the 70s.
So many crime movies get shot here.
Of course, with the saturis, like the dialect, the local dialect.
Tough guys everywhere.
Yeah, and they will kick your ass, and they have like, like the plastic hair.
Sure.
Yeah, so movies. No, the responsibility of movies is they brought me here because I fall in love with Korea.
Right.
My love for Korea started there. But Hong Sangsoo, I don't know if Hong Sangsoo movies taught me things, but I totally understood Hong Sangsoo, and I was writing about Hong Sangsoo before coming to Korea. Actually, the book we wrote, I wrote about Hong Sangsoo before coming here. But when I got here, I understood Hong Sangsoo.
Right. As soon as you got here, or did it take some time?
Very few.
I see. How much time?
Yeah, because as we were saying, Hong Sangsoo situations are very social situations.
Right.
And those are the first situations you face here. Social drinking and these kind of things.
And the way that, how to explain this, the way that social life here, there's no really border dividing event from event. If you get together with people, it just flows into other things. You might meet up at 6 o'clock in the evening, but you don't know what's going to be happening 8 hours from then. You'll probably still be out, but it just turns from one thing into the next smoothly without you even knowing. You just sort of ride the flow of things, right? You do what the group is doing. The group may change, but in America it's a bit different. If you're meeting up with somebody at 6, you'll be free again at 9, probably. I don't know what it's like in Argentina.
Yeah, it's the same.
Right. So you don't have that thing where if you're meeting up at 6, you're going to be out till 2 in the morning at least.
No. Yeah, actually,
eating another dinner of chimek.
It was very funny because my Peruvian friend, she has very serious problems when she got here, because she said, I had an appointment at 6 and I had another appointment at 9.
Oh.
That's fine. So there are 3 hours.
Yeah.
No, she couldn't get at the 9 p.m. appointment.
Right.
That Korean friend got very angry because you disappointed her at the last minute. You don't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
And if she'd left, she would have disappointed the first one.
Yeah. So she was like, what am I supposed to do? Yeah.
When was the first time you came to a Korean film festival?
Actually, it took a long time because I got here on November, and on winter there are no film festivals. The film festivals start on May, on the Jeonju Film Festival or the Busan Short Film Festival. And actually that was the first time I traveled in Korea. I didn't move before that. And I went to Jeonju and it was magical. It was so magical. That was my first festival. I went alone. I had my press ID. But at that festival, I met my closest friends now.
Oh, really?
Yes.
They still are.
Yes, of course.
Now, Jeonju, it's not a major city, but it's a city known to have good food, and it's known for its film festival. So now that you have more experience at Korean film festivals, what is special about Jeonju?
Jeonju Film Festival is independent film festival. Independent.
Right.
So,
Only independent movies. No,
Yes.
no sort of Kang Jae-gyu films.
No. No, they're small movies. The Korean section, for example, they're all first or second movies, no more. They are very protective with the people they recognize at first. So if you, for example, won the film festival, you will probably get invited to participate on the Jeonju project that is worldwide recognized. Actually, I watched film from the Jeonju project.
Even Hong Sangsoo has one of those films.
Yeah. When I was living in Spain. When I was living in Spain, in the Author Film Festival, they played the Jeonju project movies. It's a system that they choose 3 Korean directors. They choose a similar topic. Last year was this novelist, your friend, that he lives here, stories. So they chose 3 Korean film directors, and they Shor was called. they have connections all over the world, so you can actually see. Well, if you're a novel film director, you're very lucky if you get chosen because your films will travel around the globe.
Oh, I see. Now, Jeonju is a major festival here in Korea, as we say, is Busan. That's the biggest. There are others though. What are some of your favorite smaller festivals that you've been to?
I love Women Film Festival in Seoul. It's very special because it recognizes the importance of films outside film industry. They talk about the movie is not important. Sometimes they play bad movies, but after that movie, they made like a round table where they discuss, of course, related with women. We're half the world, so it's
Naturally.
Yes, it is a big deal. Or they talk about the social matter of making films. It really gets you back in touch. It takes you out of the mainstream and the parties and the how handsome is he or she. And you actually get in touch with the importance, because movies are culture. And movies are culture, and movies are very important outside its own culture too.
Right.
So I love that festival.
It's the appealing thing about film festivals. It's not just that you get to see movies, but it's that people involved with them will be there. You get a lot of, we could say that film festivals give you the context you need, right? It's not like you're getting too much of somebody else's perspective, but you're getting a different experience. It's like saying you can eat Korean food in other countries, but you don't have the context, right? It's the same thing. A film festival, it's about the context. Eating Korean food in Korea, then you're in a better context, right?
Yes.
If that makes any sense at all.
You're talking about film festivals, right?
Yeah, I'm saying when you're watching movies at a film festival versus just movies in some theater somewhere or at home on DVD.
Well, actually, it's a very good comment, because this year, you know that we had this catastrophe, the Sewol ferry. So I started going to film festivals in Korea last year, and last year they were very... actually, I feel very, very lucky that I can compare two experiences. This year in Korea is extremely sad. We had this catastrophe, and because of Confucianism, Korean culture, they take responsibility of accidents. So because this happened, and this whole crew and a lot of people, let these 300 students died, the whole society feels responsible. So actually the first thing that changed was the Korean film festivals. They stopped all the activities not related with films. Yeah, so for example, this was on April, and on May was the Jeonju Film Festival. And no parties, no activities. Jeonju is beautiful because it's a very small city. So last year I actually could attend to two of my favorite singers' concerts. They were invited, and it was free outside in a beautiful weather, beautiful city, in the context of a festival. That is why it was so magical last year. This year was all that was suspended.
Right, that's the kind of thing you won't get this last time.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. But at the same time, it made sense, all the mood in the festival. Right. The movies were sad, the people were sad, the weather was awful.
Right, you've written a bit about that. It all fit together in that way.
It was, actually, last year, for example, my plan was to be there 3 days. I stayed 5 days. This year, my plan was to stay there 4 days, and I stayed there 3. I came back earlier.
Cut it short.
I didn't want to stay there.
I heard from Korean friends. I planned this trip here before the Sewol sank, and then obviously that's not going to make me not come to Korea. But Korean friends were saying, "Oh, it's too bad you're going because Korea won't be as joyful as it usually is. It'll be the mood. Everybody will be in a worse mood. Things just won't be going as well as they usually do because of the Sewol." And I don't know, because I haven't been to Korea before, but would you say those effects have still lasted? That even now Korea is not back to its normal level of excitement or joy or whatever we could call it?
Now it's getting better. I think that next month we will be back.
I see.
Yeah, but
when I'm gone, you'll be back.
no, but you're lucky because it's fine. It's fine. Now it's fine.
But a few months ago,
my God.
it was worse.
It was so sad and so. One of my best friends, he's a Canadian producer and he used to live in Seoul. He moved to Singapore actually last week. And when this happened, he wasn't here. He was already in Singapore, like trying things out. And he came to Jeonju actually, and I was trying to explain to him something is broken. Because as I said, I teach kids. They were so sad. They were feeling that they could have been there. All the exams were cancelled. As the opposite as what one could think, that was not a good news for them, because in Korean the education is fundamental. And exams to be stopped, cancelled, that was what's going on.
That's unbelievable, yes.
What? On the streets, as you...
If anything happens for sure in Korea, it's an exam.
It's
but
an
anyway,
exam,
just on the streets,
You can be dying, but you go to an exam.
Right. And if you're late, the cops drive you to the exam if it's the Sunung Shihom.
Yes, yeah. That's exactly, the culture. The education is very important here. The streets, if you're walking in Hongdae, for example, in Seoul, you can see here's also because we are in Busan, in Gyeongsangdae, we have 2 universities, so it's very crowded. Right. It's very loud. Cosmetic shops, phone shops, they have music outside. All the bars have music outside. That was silent for like 1 month.
Wow. The noise went away.
Yes, and it was very shocking because suddenly the country was silent. All the concerts, you know that K-pop culture in here is super important. All the concerts were cancelled. Right. The film festivals, as I said, all the outside events, all the debuts, like the new K-pop. Maybe it's in Western this would sound like very stupid, but
it sounds unusual.
Cultural industry in Korea can stop a country. Right. We are talking about they stopped concerts, they stopped emissions of shows, like Running Man, Infinite Challenge. Here they are the most, they have a lot of audience. They were stopped. They stopped Inkigayo, that's like the weekend music chart. They never do that. That was cancelled. All the funny shows were cancelled. Like 70% of the shows, if you're watching Korean television, it's comedy, they were cancelled. All the dramas, the series were cancelled. For respect, basically. It's
the closest comparison I can think of in America is 9/11, and when that happened, there were some things that got canceled that day, but I feel like after that, things were. The only difference was that the news was talking about it a lot. And I mean, I lived in Seattle, Washington, which is thousands and thousands of miles from New York City, but there was never a feeling like I could have been there because it's so far away. And I don't know, I mean, in America, you don't feel like the country is your family. I feel like there's an instance more where it's like a Korean can easily picture themselves in another person's place. In America, it's pretty hard. I don't know how that goes in Argentina as far as the closeness of the country itself, whether people feel familial, but certainly they feel more that way in Korea than in either of our countries, right?
Yeah. The difference, for example, in Argentina, we have a very strong system of solidarity because for ages we have had a strong economical crisis. So if we don't help each other, we have nothing. But in Korea, the difference is culture. In here, because of Confucianism, they have like hierarchies. So if you are 1 year older, if you started studying before me, if you like that, you will have a different treatment. But at the same time, sonbenim and these kind of things. But at the same time, because you are in a higher position than me, you are responsible for me.
Right. If you eat together, they have to pay.
They have to pay, and they are responsible for you, for your education, to teach you how to do things right. So one of the things that you could hear in Korea during that period of time were older people, like the same age of the captain of the ship, saying, "I'm sorry. I am sorry we couldn't protect you. I am sorry that one of us let you die.
I see.
Because the captain is responsible for the crew.
Right.
The captain is responsible for the crew and for the passengers. The captain and the crew let the passengers die.
It is hard to believe, yeah, that if you have a captain in his late 60s, someone else in their late 60s feels like they're, he's one of us, he's one of our age group.
Yeah. It's the same generation, they have been taught the same values. So if he let these kids die, we let those kids die.
Right.
If those kids died, we could have died.
Right.
That's the thinking of my students, for example.
I see. It's generational in that way.
Yeah, and at the same time, Korean security system is very weak. Because as we know, Korean, as a country, became a powerful nation in like 20 years. So that wasn't the safety, how would you say? Like the safety system, for example, in airports, in ships, they are very responsible. Because they are still thinking like before.
Yes.
They are not being able to handle this amount of people. So the mistakes they made, for example, that day a lot of things went wrong. The ship were not supposed to sink, to sail because the weather was terrible. The corruption of the system allowed this ship to sail that day where they were not supposed to sail. Actually, they were the only ship allowed to sail that day. They were carrying 3 times the load they were supposed to. The ship was 20 years old when Korea bought this ship to Japan. That was, I don't understand about the Navy rules, but that's all for a ship.
Right.
Everything wrong. Right. And this is corruption.
Right. When enough of those wrong things add up, this is what happens.
And it's usually the worst possible result. Like 300 students died.
So when you're writing about Korean film, how much of an interest for you is it to connect Korean film to Korean social issues or the sort of complications of Korean culture today? Are you always trying to connect film to what's going on in society here?
Absolutely.
And is it always possible?
If it's not possible, I don't write.
I see.
Because, well, nowadays I don't get paid for this, so I can actually choose when to write and what to write about. That is why I like writing about film festivals, because I can watch like 10 or 20 films or more, and I can like have an open aspect of the situation. There's no interest. I mean, would you write? I wouldn't write a paper about one movie.
Right. If it was just about the movie and nothing else.
No.
Right.
There's no, I don't like. That is why I'm always, I love Korean films. That's why I'm here, because nowadays it's my life. But sometimes I forget names. I forget actors. I forget because
I can never remember actors. Sometimes I can't tell the difference between the actors. Like,
and usually the one of my friends, they are like, I respect them. They're critics and they know every name. But I'm not interested in reading what they write because they are very specific.
I see. Yes, they're too enclosed within the world of a given movie at any time. But do you think, it seems to me anyway, that Korean films, more than the films of many other countries, they're works of social criticism in and of themselves. A lot of movies, a lot of filmmakers want to critique Korean society or make a comment on it. Every country has filmmakers who do that. Does it seem to you that Korea has more filmmakers like that?
Usually the independent movies, they're very hard on Korean society. They are very, very hard. Last year, one of the winners of the Busan Film Festival was a film called Hangongju. That means, it's a name, but it has meaning. It means Korean princess. And it's actually a true story about a girl. She was raped. And it's a story about this girl and her friend. And how the story is built is all about criticizing Korean society. It's very hard. It's very harsh on Korean society. And usually, these kind of films are, well, Hong Sangsoo too. On the side of humor, he's very hard. He's always talking about this amazing and very recognized artist. They're assholes in real life.
Yes.
You don't want to. You know, sometimes we have we are lucky enough to interview some of the people we admire, and they're not interesting at all. They're like, why would you say that you're making movies? Well, I don't know, I just made them. And I'm thinking,
그냥.
yeah, and I'm thinking, if I cannot ask you, should I ask your manager?
Right, who should I ask?
You're an artist, you don't think about what you're doing.
Right.
It's just something that, is born inside you and you just have to express? Come on, don't be such a snob.
I know that Hong Sangsoo, I've never met him, but he's famous for giving difficult answers to questions, like it's a game almost, to see if he can give you a tricky answer to your question. I don't know, have you ever talked to him?
No.
I haven't either, but Darcy Paquette was on this show, the film critic up in Seoul, and he was saying some things about that as well. Like, it's always, at least in that case of Hong Sangsoo, you feel like you're being played with in a certain way. Whereas if it's just some director who only wants to say what he thinks his handler says you should say, or what he thinks the public needs to hear, or what he thinks is a safe answer, that's a different story. How do you get past that?
Yeah, at the same time, Hong Sangsoo is kind of I think he doesn't want to make a character out of himself.
Right.
So there's nothing to be said about him.
Right. I can see why he doesn't want to be identified with the characters in his movies, certainly. I mean, who would want to be, right?
No. Yeah. The only one interview I could read about him was actually in French from the Cahiers du Cinéma. Very interesting. I don't know how they did that.
Right. Yes.
It was very amazing, very clarifying. And at the same time, I don't want to read anything else.
Right.
That's enough. Sometimes we have a lot of information, and it takes the magic away.
Right. It can do that. You need to have the right amount of information. I mean, it's something that you said before we recorded, but that with films, you want to write about a film before you read other critics write about it.
Yeah.
And it was the same for you with Korea, wasn't it? You said you didn't read books on Korea until you've spent... I mean, how long did you think you needed to spend here before you could read a book safely and not have it poison your own perspective?
A year and a half?
A year and a half.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And when you did read a book, I mean, you say you read Michael Breen's book, The Koreans. Michael Breen was on this show recently. How did it feel to read a book about Korea finally, after you've spent years knowing Korean culture and then a year and a half living here?
What I like about his book is that he consulted a lot of Korean people. It's not a very personal perspective. It's like a collective perspective. It's not only about American people living here. It's also about Koreans that have a close relationship with a lot of foreigners living here. So it's not, but it's very funny because every time I'm reading that book, I'm actually kind of self-conscious and like covering the cover.
Yes.
I don't want people to know that I'm reading that because it's very stupid, the cover. That's my recommendation. Please, mister, change the cover and the name. The Koreans, the way they think, what they want, is very snob.
Yes, usually the author doesn't choose the title like that, the subtitle especially, but I see what you mean. He's working on a new edition, so maybe that will change a bit. I don't know.
I hope so, because it's a very good book, and all the time it's on my desk or it's on my bag and you can see it. I'm defending the book.
Right.
It's not, no, just the title's stupid. It's a very good book. Yeah. It has a lot of opinions. It's very, because at the same time, for example, I was discussing this with my boss. There are not a lot of information about Korean history or Korean culture in English.
Right.
Only like the culture minister.
Right.
It's very short and it's very promotional. I don't want to read that.
And often it's not very well written.
Yeah, it's not interesting.
Right. And there's got to be even less in Spanish. Like if you're looking in Spanish for books about Korea, good luck, right?
No. Yeah. No. It's very hard. You can see that. For example, when I'm translating something, I use Google Translator in English. But if I use in Spanish, it doesn't make any sense.
Right, there's much less information to work with.
No, my students, the Spanish students, they use the Naver. Naver is like the Google in Korea. Neighbor in Spanish. Don't do that. If you use a neighbor, do it in English.
Yes, right.
Because it's like a second translation.
Yeah, it goes a little too far. But you write in Spanish about Korean film, so do you have a sense of what you need to explain to a Spanish reading audience, or how you need to treat them differently from an English-speaking audience, for example? Just hypothetically in your mind, when you're writing in Spanish, what do you have to explain, or what do you have to do that somebody writing in English about Korean film may not have to?
Actually, one of the things, now that we are talking about this, I'm thinking about not reading anything before coming to Korea, is that I get disattached with this foreign feeling. So sometimes my mother tells me she has no idea. I put some picture on Facebook, and I don't explain anything.
Right.
Makgeolli, we were drinking just now. Makgeolli, delicious Korean makgeolli. They, maybe like American people or English speakers, they know makgeolli, they know kimchi. In Argentina, they have no idea. So I don't. Right. Maybe they don't know.
Right.
I lost, because now it's familiar for me. Mm-hmm. So I feel like everybody is familiar with makgeolli.
Right.
Yeah.
So you feel like you don't need to give a context,
Yes.
but then people on Facebook in Argentina ask a lot of questions.
No idea. They have no idea.
¿Qué es esto?
¿Qué es esto? Are you drinking milk? And you're saying cheers? What? Are you crazy? Yeah, but at the same time, it doesn't make any sense if you say, for example, makgeolli is a rice wine.
Right.
It's not a rice wine.
Right. Yeah, they just call it that.
Yeah. So soju, what is soju? A rice liquor?
Right. These are always hard to explain.
Yeah. When I'm trying to explain like Latin American food to my students, my Spanish students, they are like, pokumpap. Rice and chicken is pokumpap.
Yeah, I've heard paella called Spain bokkeumbap many times.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Or tteokbokki. How would you describe tteokbokki in English? Like rice noodles with spicy sweet sauce?
Yeah, rice cakes. Yeah, or I would describe it in terms of Japanese food. I'd be like, it's like mochi, but it's spicy. I don't know. You just ultimately got to try it.
In Latin America, there's no way we can understand what you're saying.
Right. Yes, you have
It's
to just
like
give them it.
Rice spaghetti with a spicy sauce, but it's not tomato.
Right.
No idea.
Just the vocabulary isn't there for it. I mean, it seems like it's true. In your experience, is it true with a lot of Korean culture? You really just have to experience it firsthand. Korean culture is not very well explained to people from any other country. It's really something you have to experience it firsthand, do you think?
I think so. Because it's not a very accessible culture. It's not like we were saying before, like Japanese food. Maybe you don't like sushi because you don't like raw fish, but you can have tuna sushi, and you will love it because the flavors are so friendly. Korean culture is not friendly at all. It's like a Korean website.
Right.
If you go to G-Market, you don't understand a thing, even though it's in English, because it's so crowded.
Yes.
Anything is like you...
They like having so much on the screen at once.
Yeah, and the food is the same.
Yes.
It's very crowded.
So much in the bowl at once. Yes.
So it's not a very accessible culture if you're not here.
Right.
So that is why once you understand that you feel very attracted to the culture, you feel the need to come.
And why, in your experience, once you get a taste of Korean culture, of all elements of it, why then can you not do without it?
Korean changes you so deeply. I think I've had cultural shock, but I think that it would be very bad when I come back. The respect, for example, I think that the relationship with my parents have changed since I'm here. I used to be very rebel, because we are very rebel in Argentina. We are Che Guevara. So if they say something, we say no.
Yes, automatically.
But now I say, ne, algastimida. Okay, ne?
That's
Okay.
your bow.
Yeah.
Nah,
Because
ne.
of my mother, okay? Yeah, okay. I don't get angry.
Koreans find a way to do whatever they want anyway sometimes, but they do agree and bow and...
That's so smart.
Yes.
I didn't have a troubled, like, teenager. I wasn't that kind of teenager, but things are easier.
Right.
They are very smart. And other things, well, the music, I'm listening like Korean music like all the time. It's very hard. For example, I had some favorite radio shows in Argentina, but every time I'm listening, then where am I? What's going on? It's very upsetting.
I see.
Yeah, it's like takes me out of place. So, yeah, Korean food too. I eat Korean food. I cook Korean food in my house. I don't eat other, like Western food. Yeah, maybe pasta I make, but that's pretty much it. Yeah, the transformation is very profound.
So you'll have to be, if you go to Argentina, again, you'll have to bring a piece of Korea with you in some way to surround yourself with, or else it's going to be hard.
I think so. Yeah, because in Buenos Aires, I'm not from the capital, so in Buenos Aires, the Korean community is bigger, and you have like Korean restaurants, but in my city, I don't think we do. We have like Asian shops, like food shops, but I think they are most like Chinese or Japanese.
I see. You'll have to convince Korean friends here. One of them has to go to your city and start a restaurant.
I've convinced one of my students.
Oh,
actually,
really?
yeah. He will spend 1 month of November in Argentina.
Really?
How cool is that? Well, actually, they are all, that tonight, to put in context, is the final, the World Cup,
Yes.
Argentina-Germany. So they are all like, yeah, Argentina.
And you're waking up at what hour to watch it tomorrow?
At 4.
Oh my God.
Yes. That's commitment. That is love, my friends.
Yes. If anybody says you've lost the Argentine inside you, just watch you watching the game at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Yeah, with 2 Korean friends, actually. So, yeah.
And if Argentina wins, what will you do?
I would cry a lot. Yes, that would happen. What else?
Will you be celebrating in a Korean way or an Argentine way? I don't know what the difference is.
I can't celebrate in Argentinian way. I was watching some videos on Facebook of all my friends, they upload it, and I forgot. Right, every time we win a game, we go outside in our cars and we horn. So yeah, we just go outside with the flag and we celebrate, and you meet whoever is there, and you hug them and you jump. You don't know each other, but you just celebrate. Yeah,
So you might be the only one with that flag outside.
I don't have a flag.
Oh, no.
No, but I have a pin.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
It's
enough.
like half the Argentinian flag and half the Korean flag.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Where'd you get that?
My embassy.
Oh. That's the place you're going to get it. So you can hold
Actually,
it.
I'm right. We are in contact with my embassy because we are very few. So we are writing with the ambassador and the secretary ambassador. Vamos, Argentina! Vamos!
Yes. Vamos, Argentina.
Vamos!
Indeed. I've been sitting here in Busan, South Korea, with Sofía Ferrero Cárrega. She writes about film here in Busan, and she represents Argentina and will one day represent Korea back home in Argentina, no doubt. Where can readers go if they read Spanish or, like me, like to read about Asia in Spanish? Where can they go to find your work?
My website is sofiabari, with a B, sofiabari.com.ar, Argentina. And I write usually for a Spanish website. It's called acuartaparede.com. It's a very interesting website. Yes, they can find me here. And yeah, last recommendation, come to Korea. It's a very interesting, it's not expensive to come here. It's super interesting. It's a small country, so you can actually experience the country. And yeah, we have Japan, we have China, but Korea is very unique.
Indeed, it is. It is the king of uniqueness in some ways of Asia. Sofía, muchísimas gracias.
De nada. Have a good back home, and we will be waiting for you here.
Indeed, I'll be back.
Yes.
voy a volver.
This has been Notebook on Cities and Culture. I've been Colin Marshall. You can keep up with the cultural creators, internationalists, and observers of the urban scene on the show at colinmarshall.org. Thanks. And special thanks to all the backers of Notebook on Cities and Culture's Korea tour on Kickstarter. Adam Hartzell, Aidan Nullman, Alfred Lee, Andy Cooney, Angus Gordon, Bala Chenupati, Cam Smith, Chin Music Press, Dan Caraselli, Danny, Deborah Smith, Emmett Farragher, Humberto Grant, Ian Plosker, Ismail Kennedy, Jackie Gast, Jay Chang, Jeffrey Davis, James DeVito, Jonathan Filbert, Josh Paget, Kimberly Hahn, Manvir, Mark Hines, Matthew Workman, Maureen Kincaid Speller, Monica Eck, Michael Fransky, MJ Pritchett, Patrick O'Flaherty, Patrick Park, Piers Rippey, Robert Salzberg, Samuel Hansen, Sean Brown, Themistocles Chakrusis, Thomas Unterberger, Timothy Dobbs, and Wayne Wright.